example, currently there was a riot going on. So because of the NEET issue, how did the Delhi police behave? And who gave the directions to Delhi police to behave in a way that they behaved, right? That was not right. That was not appropriate. That was not ethical. You are actually harming the unarmed citizens of your own country. The emotion of love, the emotion of anger, the emotion of hatred, the emotion of lust. So these are all emotions, right? Now, emotions are a part of your life. How do you manage it? For your emotional intelligence means managing your own emotions as well as emotions of others so that it can be used in a productive manner. Example, you are a civil servant posted in a tribal area. Now you have a mandate given by the government that you have to rehabilitate certain people for the construction of a dam, or let's say that is the job of a civil servant. Go about understanding their emotions and implement the strategy to a larger extent, right? So that is the main agenda. Policy drafting you help kar dega. Policy implementation important rules. Hey guys, welcome to Manika IAS. Today we are going to see the most important chapter for your ethics series, and that is emotional intelligence. We have seen a lot of chapters before also. The very first chapter that we have seen is about ethics and human interface. Then we have seen what are the various aptitude that a civil servant should have and the foundational values. Number 3 is the attitude that a civil servant should have, right? So these are the certain chapters that we have seen along with the moral thinkers. We have tried to solve a few questions. We have seen a few case studies also. Today is the time of a very important chapter, and the chapter is emotional intelligence. This is chapter number 5 as per the UPSC syllabus. So let's look what are the various things that is mentioned in the syllabus and what are the things that we are going to see in today's session. Okay, so the very first thing, as we always see, is the syllabus. Syllabus is the most important part. What are the various things? For example, the concept. What is emotional intelligence as a concept? That is the first thing that we are going to see. Second is utilities and application. अब concept तो ठीक है, but how do we apply in real terms? How do we apply in the governance? How we apply it in the administration? Okay, so utilities in administration and in the governance. How do we take governance to good governance and ethical governance with the help of emotional intelligence? Okay, so this is a theory, and along with that, we will also try to see a topper copy. All India rank 53. Her name is Samisha Dwivedi. All India rank 56. Okay, this year it's 56, not 53 as such. So it's 2025 say. The thing that we need to copy from a topper is two. The first is how do they present the answer? What is the answer writing style? That is number 1. Okay. Number 2, what are the kind of examples that they are writing? So you do not have to run from pillar to post. You do not have to Google. You do not have to use AI in order to get the examples. Simply by looking into the topper copies, you can extract a lot of examples. And as I always say, ethics is a very easy subject. Out of 250, you can easily score 120, 125 without much effort. Only you have to be a bit smart. You have to know the terms. You have to go for the topper copies, write a few answers, and done and dusted. You can easily score 120, 125. And then obviously, if you add more value to that, you can go up to 138. As we have seen, A.R. Raja had scored 138 in this year ethics paper. Okay. So I hope you got a brief idea what are the things that we are going to see in today's session. Okay. So let's start with the first slide. The very first thing that we are going to see is the concept. You see, before we go into the nitty-gritty, this is the image of a book which is a very famous book written by Daniel Goleman. Now, who is Daniel Goleman? He is one of the person who made emotional intelligence very famous with the help of this book. Actually, this concept of emotional intelligence was given by somebody else. Okay, Elver and Sloane, we call them. But most importantly, people know emotional intelligence as a concept because of Daniel Goleman. This is the book. If you happen to be in Mukherjee Nagar or Rajendra Nagar, you must have seen this book like in almost every bookshop, and you must have heard about this book also. So this book was published way back more than 25 years in 1995, and there have been many copies sold of this book. If you have a habit of reading books, I suggest that you go and have a look about this book, right? So it will give you certain insights how an administrator should think when they are in a certain dilemma, when they have some cognitive dissonance. Because ultimately, who is a civil servant? A civil servant is dealing with people on day-to-day basis. Not just the seniors, but at the same time the juniors also. At the same time, the public at large also. So anything can come up. For example, currently there was a riot going on, right? So because of the NEET issue, अब वहां पे हमने देखा that how did the Delhi police behave, and who gave the directions to Delhi police to behave in a way that they behaved, right? That was not right, that was not appropriate, that was not ethical, right? So you are actually harming the unarmed citizens of your own country. So that could have been handled in a much better way by the government, by the Delhi police, right? So this is a live example that how do you go about resolving a certain thing with the help of emotional intelligence. So the very first thing, if this concept is asked in your examination, how do you go about writing it? So we'll look into the definition. The definition is emotional intelligence is the capacity to recognize own feeling. That is the feeling of your own. What is emotions? The emotion of love, the emotion of anger, the emotion of hatred, the emotion of lust. So these are all emotions, right? Now, emotions are a part of your life. How do you manage it for your well-being, for the well-being of the society? That is the question. And that is why a civil servant can be called emotionally intelligent if they are able to manage their own emotions, right? So managing own feelings and those of others, motivate ourselves and manage emotions well in ourselves and in our relationships. Because ultimately, as I already told you, a civil servant has to deal with civilians as such, okay, or let's say civil society, the public, the seniors, the juniors or subordinates, okay. So there are many people that you have to deal in day-to-day life. They might have their own emotions, they are going through their own challenges in life, they will bring up a challenge for you, okay. They for example, आप office जा रहे हो, you are not in a good mood, you had a fight on the road, right, and you are carrying the same emotions to your office. Now if you are an emotionally intelligent person, you will try to resolve that emotion, okay, क्यों हुआ, उसका कारण क्या था, and how do I go about solving that emotion, right? If on day-to-day basis you are triggered by every single thing, then I think it's very important for you to take a stock and how do you go about resolving that issue, right? Because we also stay in a family, right? We also have parents, you might have a friend, you might be married as well. Okay, managing emotions for yourself and at the same time for your family as well becomes very, very pivotal for you. Apart from that, obviously, you are a civil servant, then you have to manage your emotions with the public as well, right? So this is a very, very crucial aspect. So अगर definition आता है एग्जाम में, so this is a definition that you have to write. Simple भाषा में अगर मैं बताऊं, emotional intelligence means managing your own emotions as well as emotions of others so that it can be used in a productive manner. Simple definition अगर आप लिखना चाहो, ठीक है? So this is the definition. Now let's see the concept of emotional intelligence was originally coined and defined in 1990 by Peter Salovny and John D. Mayer. ये दोनों हैं जिन्होंने कॉन्सेप्ट दिया था, बट एज आई ऑलरेडी टोल्ड यू इट वाज लाइक मेड मच फेमस बाय डेनियल गोलमैन इन 1995 by the best selling book called as Emotional Intelligence, and this is the picture of the book. I hope the definition of emotional intelligence is clear. Now let's see if we talk about emotional intelligence. कई बार हम पहली बार सुनते हैं what is emotional intelligence, and हम IQ के बारे में बहुत सुनते हैं, intelligent quotient, right? So intelligent quotient is one thing, IQ is one thing, EQ is another thing. E हमने अभी बताया, it's about emotion, I is about intelligence, ठीक है? So intelligence is what? Intelligence is the mental capacity to solve an issue, to understand an issue, to know the rules, nitty-gritty, regulations. What is the objective thing there, right? Emotions, on the other hand, is driven by hurt, is driven by how do you perceive a thing, how do you respond to a thing, is mostly driven by your emotions, is the affective component, whereas intelligence is the cognitive, that means with related to brain, and emotion is with related to hurt. पॉलिसी ड्राफ्टिंग, लीगल इंप्लीमेंटेशन, डेटा एनालिसिस, हमने पिछले क्लास में भी देखा था. द डेफिनेशन ऑफ ऑब्जेक्टिविटी is to analyze every single situation on the basis of data, on the basis of fact, right, on the basis of evidence, and that is a very, very important aspect of a civil servant. आप कोई भी कॉल डिस्क्रिशन पे तो ले सकते हो, but that discretion has also be backed by a certain data fact on the basis of certain examples that is being already present in front of you, right? So that is very important. Policy drafting में बहुत important है that you are being objective. However, जब इंप्लीमेंटेशन का बात आता है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू आर अ सिविल सर्वेंट पोस्टेड इन अ ट्राइबल एरिया, नाउ you have a mandate given by the government that you have to rehabilitate certain people for the construction of a dam, or let's say उनको घर बना के देना है, and that is the job of a civil servant, right? If you are a civil servant posted in somewhere like let's say Chhattisgarh or let's say Jharkhand, right? Obviously now they have been Naxal free by and large, but अगर आप अभी भी ट्राइबल एरिया में जाते हो तो दे हैव अ सर्टेन सेंस ऑफ इनहिबिशन, दे डू नॉट वांट the kind of development that in mainland India people want, right? So how do you go about understanding their emotions and implement the strategy to a larger extent, right? So that is the main agenda. पॉलिसी ड्राफ्टिंग में तो आपको IQ हेल्प कर देगा, ठीक है, बट पॉलिसी इंप्लीमेंटेशन में आपका EQ बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करेगा. क्राइसिस रेजोल्यूशन, जैसे अभी मैंने बात किया, राइट, राइट. So the job of a civil servant, the job of a commissioner of police, the job of an IPS officer or IAS officer has to be very very prudent, has to be backed by emotions as well. Obviously उनको law तो follow करना ही है, but at the same time understand आप हो किस लिए. You are there to help people, you are there to bring welfare to the society, right? So ये एक आपके subconscious में रहना चाहिए चीज. Obviously leadership, it goes without saying, because the position that you are in, you are you know you are you are in a position that you will have to show some leadership skills, right? आपसे ये एक्सपेक्ट नहीं किया जा सकता that आप इमोशंस के ऊपर ना इमोशंस आपके ऊपर हावी हो गए and you have taken a wrong call on that, right? Formulates the SOP. What is SOP? SOP is standard operating procedure. अब ये इंपॉर्टेंट क्यों है? देखो हमारे पास SOP तो जरूरी है. SOP is one thing, discretion is another thing. आप जो भी कॉल लोगे has to be backed by various rules and regulations. That is why SOP is very important. However, the management of human element executing the SOP has to be driven by EQ. ठीक है, कई बार हम देखते हैं, for example, recently in last few years back, there was a girl who died because in Chhattisgarh a civil servant has denied the distribution of food. You know, जैसे public distribution system होता है, जैसे PDA system है, तो उसमें food deny कर दिया गया था. When a food has been denied, the child died. So the liability and the accountability will be on that civil servant. हाँ, I understand the rule says that you should have your Aadhaar linked, right? But अगर उसकी entitlement miss हो जाती है तो उसको उसकी डेथ हो सकती है, and who is responsible for that? The civil servant is responsible. Recently हमने देखा था, obviously it's not related to your public service as large. Recently बैंक हम जाते हैं, so suppose किसी की डेथ हो गई थी. Recently a tribal man kind of dig the grave of his own sister and carried the dead body to the bank to show that the sister is no more. Now this is a pathetic situation that a society has to go through, right? Recently it got viral in social media. तो ये show करता है that the bank officials were not sensitive enough. Why a person has to go that extent? ठीक है, कोई फिजिकल कॉपी हो सकता है. लेट्स से आपके पास कोई सिविल सर्वेंट जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे हैं, उन्होंने कोई एक सर्टिफिकेट इशू कर दिया होता, ठीक है, तो ये सिचुएशन नहीं आता. तो दिस इज द काइंड ऑफ सिचुएशन व्हेनेवर यू गो थ्रू अ लॉट ऑफ वीडियोस आल्सो इन सोशल मीडिया, you have to make sure that how do you apply and what is the kind of value that a civil servant is lacking. ठीक है, अब इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस उसके पास बिल्कुल नहीं था, because the person has to really dig the grave of his own sister and bring as a proof that she is no more. So this is a pathetic situation, right? So I hope you get an idea what is the role of emotions and how a civil servant should have emotions to understand not just his own but the emotions of others. ठीक है, that is the role of an emotional intelligence person. अब ये quote है, this exact quote you can use in your mains examination. IQ is required to build the state apparatus. IQ is intelligent quotient, but EQ is required to prevent the apparatus from crushing the very people it was built to protect. Who is a civil servant? Who is an IAS officer? Who is an IPS officer? The job of an officer is to serve the public, right? But अगर वहां से आप डिसोए हो जाते हो, that means you have diverted your path and you have forgot the principles of a public service, right? So that is the major thing, that all this thing is to serve the people. All this thing is to make sure that public welfare is done. Okay, the main goal is public welfare, and public welfare, mind you, is the cornerstone, or let's say the trust that the people will hold and the people will respect you. So we have seen what is the difference between IQ and EQ. Now if a person, or let's say if a question comes in the mains examination, what is more important? IQ is more important or EQ is more important? Just give a couple of seconds and think about yourself. इन सिविल सर्विसेज बोथ IQ एंड EQ इज इंपॉर्टेंट, राइट? EQ हम कब चेक करते हैं? बेसिकली EQ आपका चेक होता है पर्सनालिटी डेवलपमेंट वाला जो टेस्ट होता है, इंटरव्यू जिसको हम कहते हैं, ठीक है? सो इन इंटरव्यू द यूपीएससी बोर्ड विल आस्क 5 or 6 members are there, they will ask you questions. What is the person having in himself? How does he respond to a certain question? How does he react to a certain question? So these are certain traits that UPSC will check you before they actually allocate you a service, right? So that is the main important role of EQ, and obviously EQ आपका ethics paper में भी check होता है. So these are the two places where EQ is actually checked before you get into the service. अब IQ कब चेक होता है? IQ तो आपका पहले पेपर से चेक हो जाता है, CSAT का पेपर. Now obviously this year they have also included two ethics like question in the prelims examination, which was a bouncer for many students, right? So IQ आपका GS में, prelims में, your CSAT में, those things are already checked in your first step. So this is the dual engine of effective governance. Effective governance needs both IQ and EQ, right? So three scenarios are possible: high IQ and low EQ. High IQ and low EQ will produce a very, very corrupt official. All the corruption that you have seen recently in Haryana, 3 IAS officers have been arrested by CBI on the charges of corruption, and not just 1 or 2 crores of corruption, multiple crores corruption is there, right? And it was very sad because the funds have been taken from health, education, these kind of departments, right? So high IQ and low EQ will always create a corrupt bureaucrat. थियोडर रूजवेल्ट, अब ये जो कोट है ना, अब देखो, द पर्पस ऑफ अ क्लास इज ऑल्सो टू मेक श्योर दैट यू हैव सम कंटेंट इन योर हैंड. एग्जैक्ट कोट you can add in your conclusion, you can add in your introduction. Whenever you have a high intellectual understanding but low or compromise morality or compromise emotional intelligence, then you can directly use this quote. Theodore Roosevelt said, to educate a mind to educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace to the society. Menace, or let's say it's a kind of penalty to the society. The person will become more corrupt because he has lot of IQ. आज भी आप देखो, lot many quotes are there. जो भी corruption करते हैं, they all are very, very educated people. You must have seen that a judge of Allahabad High Court has been caught burning some bags of rupees in his backyard, right? So this is, I'm talking about a high court judge. Now high court judges are not expected to do corruption because they are already well off in the society. They are already getting so much of amenities and facilities. Now if they are doing corruption, then what does the signal they give to the society? Now he has resigned and the thing is going on in the parliament, Lok Sabha. There is already a kind of resolution in the Lok Sabha about how do you go about resolving this issue. So this is a very, very poor state of affairs. Now we are talking about an example, a judge who has a very high IQ but emotional intelligence is very poor because he compromised on his values, he compromised on his integrity, he compromised on his objectivity. It's a disgrace for society as well, right? So high IQ and low EQ will create a corrupt official. Low IQ and high EQ. अब low IQ and high EQ, आप कोई भी चीज पे इमोशनल हो जाते हो, आप कोई भी चीज पे ट्रिगर्ड हो जाते हो, तो यू टेक अ वेरी इमोशनल चार्ज्ड कॉल. अल्टीमेटली वो भी कॉम्प्रोमाइज करेगी सिस्टम को. फॉर एग्जांपल, यू आर अ सिविल सर्वेंट पोस्टेड इन अ डिस्ट्रिक्ट विच हैज बीन हिट बाय अ फेमाइन और लेट्स से ड्रॉट. ठीक है, बहुत दिन से सूखा पड़ा हुआ है और उस डिस्ट्रिक्ट में बारिश नहीं आ रही है. आपके पास जो भी फंड है, आपको लगा गरीब लोग हैं, हम डायरेक्टली डिस्पेंस कर देते हैं. जो भी आपके पास किटी में फंड में पैसा है, आप सीधा डिस्पेंस कर दिए. नाउ दैट फंड विल बी यूज्ड इन like 1 week to 10 days and that will be consumed, and that is not a sustainable solution for the district. The sustainable solution has to be, obviously आप थोड़ा एक बार immediate help करने की कोशिश करो, जो हम केस स्टडी में भी देखते हैं. एक हो गया शॉर्ट टर्म बेसिस सॉल्यूशन, एक हो गया लॉन्ग टर्म. शॉर्ट टर्म में आप क्या करोगे, यू विल मेक श्योर दैट एटलीस्ट उनको दे आर बीइंग प्रोवाइडेड द वाटर फैसिलिटी, दे आर प्रोवाइडेड द फूड फैसिलिटीज फॉर द शॉर्ट टर्म. बट फॉर द लॉन्ग टर्म यू विल ऑल्सो कीप सम फंड सो दैट उनके वहां पे चेक डैम्स बनाए जा सके. ठीक है, वाटर को रिस्टोर किया जा सके, so that plantation drive is there, so that the soil, the ground holds more moisture, right? So this is a kind of civil servant that is actually required. High IQ and high EQ, best possible scenario. Now why it is best? Because आप rules और regulations को तो follow कर ही रहे हो. At the same time, you are making sure that EQ is also balanced. ठीक है, आप हर एक call को IQ builds the plan, EQ drives the journey, or let's say EQ drives the plan. ठीक है, IQ से आप बनाओगे, अच्छा ठीक है, एनालाइज करोगे क्या फैक्ट है, क्या स्ट्रक्चर होना चाहिए, लॉजिक क्या होना चाहिए, प्रिसीजन क्या होना चाहिए. Whereas on the other hand, EQ will derive your empathy, trust, communication with the people that you are actually governing, collaboration. It's not about that you will only do everything. Collaboration में कौन कौन आ सकते हैं? Here NGOs can come, your civil society can come, right? So multiple aspects are there that you have to take into consideration whenever you are going for a development plan, right? So I hope you can get an idea. These two are important for good governance, not just good, ethical governance भी हम इसको बोल सकते हैं, right? IQ gets you to the table, EQ gets you the results. Together they deliver the public good, right? So I hope आप इस तरीका से भी एक फ्लो चार्ट यूज कर सकते हो in your mains examination. Now let's look into a very important thing जो आप आंसर राइटिंग में यूज कर सकते हो. नाउ वी विल ऑल्सो सी टॉपर कॉपी जो हमने बोला है समीक्षा द्विवेदी, ठीक है. एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस क्या है? पहला, पर्सनल, क्योंकि यू आर ऑल्सो ह्यूमन बीइंग, यू ऑल्सो गो थ्रू डे टू डे मल्टीपल इमोशंस इन योर लाइफ. सेकेंड इज योर सोशल कॉम्पिटेंस. आप जब इमोशंस अपने साथ मैनेज कर रहे हो बट यू आर एक्चुअली डूइंग अ पब्लिक सर्विस, राइट? पब्लिक सर्विस में यू हैव टू डील विद पब्लिक, सो वहां पे सोशल कॉम्पिटेंस विल ऑल्सो प्ले अ मेजर रोल. रिकॉग्निशन, क्या रिकॉग्नाइज करना है, और रेगुलेशन, क्या रेगुलेट करना है, ठीक है. सो द फर्स्ट थिंग इज योर सेल्फ अवेयरनेस. इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस में द वेरी फर्स्ट थिंग इज टू regulate yourself before you regulate others. Very important and a very first step. And this is how you will write your answers also. First is self-awareness, self-management. The moment you know something is there, right, that you are being charged by a certain emotion, you will try to control yourself, you will try to regulate your emotions. Second, management. Obviously, controlling that emotion is part of the management. Third is social awareness. The people that you are trying to help, who are they, how they are feeling about a certain thing. जैसे हमने ट्राइबल केस के बारे में भी बात की है, ठीक है. सो हाउ ट्राइबल्स आर फीलिंग, हाउ रूरल पीपल आर फीलिंग, बिकॉज लार्जली अगेन इंडिया इज एन एग्रीगेरियन इकोनॉमी. by and large most of the people are based on agriculture, right? So we are trying to cater to the rural masses also. तो वहां पे जो अर्बन mainland से belong करते हैं, they should understand, and that is why Bharat Darshan is there. That is why you civil servants are posted and sent to rural places to see the kind of life that they are living, right? So that they also understand, okay, this is the kind of culture that we are going to serve. And how do you imbibe those emotions in yourself? That is also a part of emotional intelligence. The fourth is relationship management, because ultimately, as I told you, it's about a teamwork. You cannot do anything alone. You are working in a team, you are working for the people. So ultimately, it's a win-win situation for everyone if you are being managed in a good way. So the society will move in the right direction. So this image ko you can use in your mains examination. Now, a very important aspect is about the application. एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस जो हमने देखा है उसमें आप आंसर्स में कैसे लिख सकते हो. द वेरी फर्स्ट इज सेल्फ अवेयरनेस. देखो यहां तो पर्सनल आपके कैटेगराइजेशन के लिए मैंने लिख दिया है. सेकंड इज योर सोशल, ठीक है. सो देयर आर बेसिकली टू ब्रॉड फ्रेमवर्क. वन इज पर्सनल, सेकंड इज योर सोशल. पर्सनल में क्या है? सेल्फ अवेयरनेस, सेल्फ रेगुलेशन, इंटरनल मोटिवेशन. फोर्थ इज योर एम्पैथी, फिफ्थ इज योर सोशल स्किल्स, ठीक है. सो इस तरीके से आप स्ट्रक्चर कर सकते हो. व्हेनेवर अ क्वेश्चन ऑन इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस इज आस्क्ड, if you categorize your answers on these parameters, you will get a very good structure, because in answer writing structure is very important. Without structure you do not write anything. What are the three frameworks of structure? First is introduction, body, conclusion. Major जो है introduction में obviously you will write what is the demand of the question. Body में you will structure in these 5 parameters. Emotional intelligence के ऊपर आता है, तो these are the 5 parameters that you can write in your body part. And then eventually try to conclude with any quote. जैसे थियोडर रूजवेल्ट का हमने देखा है, महात्मा गांधी का कोट है, स्वामी विवेकानंद जी का कोट है, एपीजे अब्दुल कलाम का कोट है. So any quote is there, you can conclude with that, right? So we were seeing about the aspects of emotional intelligence. First is self-awareness, recognizing your own moods, triggers and biases. आपके अपने bias भी हो सकते हैं कुछ ना. You might have certain bias toward a certain individual, toward a certain community, toward a certain religion, right? So उस biasness को भी आपको manage करना है, because ultimately you are a civil servant and that is how you have to look into things. Politicians के लिए भी, if somebody, for example, Prime Minister Modi is Prime Minister for the whole country, वो उनके लिए तो Prime Minister नहीं है जिन्होंने उनके लिए वोट किया है. So he is there for the entire country, or certain sections जो उनके लिए vote किए हैं. For example, certain urban people have voted for Prime Minister Modi. So he's not just representing the urban India, right? He's also representing the rural India, correct? So that is how you have to look into things. And the thing is, administrative application क्या हो सकता है? Knowing when personal anger or tiredness might compromise your decision making. Second is your self-regulation, controlling and redirecting disruptive impulses and remaining calm under pressure. You have to remain calm. Very, very important aspect, because if you are also charged up, you might take a call which might backfire. For example, recently when the farmer protest was going in Haryana in 2021 or 22, there was a very young IAS officer. He gave a permission of hitting the farmers. Now that had a backlash. Literally, he had to come to the media, and the chief minister had to come and say sorry to the people and kind of apologize to the people. So that kind of situation can also come if you are not calm under a very intense situation. Maintaining stoicism during the hostile public hearings or aggressive media question, because whenever you are a public servant, you have to be in the public. So you should not be saying something which might backfire. And just in case if some people are charging on you, you have to make your own composure. Okay? You have to make your own calm and make sure that the thing is resolved in a ambiguous manner, in a very pleasant manner. That is the main thing. Internal motivation, ultimately, as I told you, it's all about public work, passion to work for reasons that go beyond money, because you are ultimately joining civil services not for money, not for power, not for status, but for public service, right? So that has to be kept. Driven by constitutional duty, constitutional morality भी लिख सकते हो. Constitutional morality is very important, right? तो constitutional morality से भी आपको guide होना पड़ेगा. This is a hallmark for any civil servant. Intrinsic achievement. अब you should not be waiting for somebody to appreciate you. आप अपने आप को भी appreciate कर सकते हो, आपने कुछ अच्छा काम किया है, right? If you do, let's say if you are studying 10 hours in a day, you should be appreciating yourself. Yes, I have done an amazing job. If you have written 4-5 answers in a day, that means you have done an amazing job. If you have seen PYQs, what are the kind of previous year question paper, you have done an amazing job. If you have seen the syllabus, you have done an amazing job. So these are certain milestones that you have to do on a daily basis. These are certain tasks that you have to do on a daily basis, and you will feel motivated and good about yourself, right? So this is the whole purpose of emotional intelligence. Next we see empathy. Empathy, understanding the emotional makeup and unstated anxieties of others. Reading the fears of marginalized community, जो हमने बात किया, for example, tribals, for example, rural society, facing infrastructure displacement, जैसे हमने डैम के बारे में एग्जाम्पल में बात किया है, ठीक है. Social skills, managing relationship, building networks, de-escalating conflict and persuading teams, because ultimately you are working in a team, so you have to motivate your team because you are in a position of leadership, right? Negotiating with the union leaders, very very important, very very critical. Always community elders during a law and order situation. For example, आप कहीं demolition के लिए गए हो, कोई religious temple है या mosque है या कोई गुरुद्वारा है, for example, if that has to be shifted, it is a very charged environment. People in that locality will not be happy about that, because a religious institution has to be moved from one place to another, right? तो आप उस कम्युनिटी के, उस रिलीजन के लीडर्स के साथ कैसे बात करते हो, आपने क्या रेपो बिल्डअप किया है, दैट प्लेज अ मेजर रोल, ठीक है. दे शुड गेट एन फीलिंग दैट दिस इज डन फॉर द लार्जर बेनिफिट ऑफ द सोसाइटी, ठीक है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, लेट्स से अ रोड हैज टू बी बिल्ट, अ फ्लाईओवर हैज टू बी बिल्ट, हाउ इट कैन हेल्प द पीपल, हाउ इट कैन हेल्प पीपल ड्यूरिंग द काइंड ऑफ अर्बन फ्लडिंग. अगर वहां अर्बन फ्लडिंग हो रहा है तो वो उससे कम हो सकता है, देयर कैन बी लेस डेथ, ठीक है. Multiple things are there, right? So that is the job of a civil servant, to make and kind of show leadership by managing his own emotions and at the same time managing emotions of others. Because again, when you go in public service, आपने देख ही लिया होगा what is the kind of transition that we are going in a society. India is going through a very very different phase right now. The Gen Zs are very vocal about the things that they want, right? So you have to be very communicative. अगर आप communicate नहीं कर पा रहे हो ना, तो that will create a lot of gap, जो इस बार भी हुआ है. The government came to the forefront, but it took a lot of time. I think this kind of mishap could have been prevented if the government was proactive in the call, right? So we have seen the things that we need to see, or let's say understand, for answer writing. Now very very important aspect, this is by a topper, and let's see how does a topper write. Okay, very very important aspect. The question is, in the light of increasing incidence of suicides among students, for example, अभी नीट का भी देखा हमने, many students have committed suicide because of the irregularities in the NEET paper, because the exam was cancelled and the student had to face a lot of problem, right? Many students have died and the families have been disrupted because of that. Discuss how emotional intelligence can aid in managing stress and emotional challenges. Answer in 150 words and 10 markers. All the questions of your ethics, the theory portion is always asked in 150 words and 10 marker, right? So you have to write in 2 pages and accordingly you will be awarded marks to that. So the topper has written recent suicides of students like Rohit Vemula. ठीक है, ये थोड़ा पुराना है. You can write the example of NEET also over here. ठीक है, in notable organizations like IITs, NITs, or let's say आप यहाँ पे कोटा का भी example दे दो. Many students do commit suicides in quota also because they have just given their 10th examination, they have just given their 12th examination. There are a lot of expectations from the family, like parents put a lot of pressure on the students and the students are not able to manage. They also feel a lot of pressure because they have to prove their point, right? They have to prove to their families, they have to prove to their society, and they are little children, they are like literally kids, right? So they feel a lot of pressure and that's why this kind of situation is there in India. But I think the parents are more aware now. They take a very long picture and I think the role of parents, the role of family, जो हमने फर्स्ट क्लास में भी देखा था एथिक्स एंड ह्यूमन इंटरफेस वाले में, the role of family becomes important, the role of parents become important, the role of father is different, the role of mother is different, the role of teachers are different, grandparents are different, right? So multiple aspects should come together and try to deal with this situation. इस तरीके से आप लिख सकते हो. तो नीट का एग्जांपल दे सकते हो, कोटा का एग्जांपल दे सकते हो. Underlines the need of stress and emotional regulation. ठीक है. Now she has done a subheading part. जब ये बॉक्स में दिया हुआ है, that means she has done a box also on that. ठीक है. Role of emotional intelligence in stress and emotional management. सबसे पहला सेल्फ अवेयरनेस. नाउ शी हैज गिवन अ बॉक्स हियर ऑल्सो. तो आप देखो किस तरीका से बॉक्स में वही सारी चीजें लिखी गई हैं जो अभी हमने डिस्कस किया है. सोशल स्किल्स, मोटिवेशन, एम्पैथी, सेल्फ अवेयरनेस. अब देखो बुद्धा का यहां पे कोड भी दिया हुआ है. एंगर इज लाइक होल्डिंग अ हॉट कोल with the intent of throwing it at others, but it only burns oneself. अगर आपने जलता कोयला हाथ में रखा और आपको लग रहा है किसी के ऊपर मैं फेंक दूंगा ये, तो इट्स लाइक होल्डिंग अ कोल. दैट्स व्हाई एंगर इज अ वेरी वेरी बैड इमोशन, राइट? सेकंड इज सेल्फ रेगुलेशन. द बेस्ट रेमेडी फॉर एंगर इज डिले. जैसे आपने लाइक इफ यू हैपन टू सी सर्टेन स्पिरिचुअल काइंड ऑफ बाबा सॉर्ट ऑफ थिंग, तो वो कहते हैं अगर गुस्सा है तो मुंह में पानी रख लेना चाहिए, सो दैट व्हेन यू आर एंग्री you tend to say a lot of nonsense which you're not kind of meaning also. You might not mean those things, but ultimately because you're angry, so you blabber a lot of shit, right? So that scenario should not come. So isliye the best remedy for anger is delay. Example, suicide done in the heat of moment. So is tarike se aap apne emotions ko manage kar sakte ho. Example of Three Idiots. R Madhavan ne bola tha, whenever you feel like committing a suicide, think about what will go through your parents mind, how will your parents think about it. So हम तो सोच लेते हैं बहुत हाइंडसाइड में, चलो ठीक है एग्जाम है निकल जाएगा, पेरेंट्स विल बी हैप्पी. नहीं होगा, वी टेक अ लॉट ऑफ प्रेशर. व्हाट विल द पेरेंट्स थिंक, व्हाट विल द सोसाइटी थिंक, वो रिलेटिव कैसे सोचेगा. ठीक है, किसी को कोई नहीं सोचना होता, नोबडी इज पेइंग सो मच अटेंशन. ठीक है, इट्स योर लाइफ, ट्राई टू डू द बेस्ट यू कैन. पीपल माइट फेल, पीपल माइट सक्सीड, दैट्स another case, right? But your job is to try the best you can. Okay, results are a part of whatever you have done. And to be honest with you, in a country like India where so much of competition, it is I think technically and intellectually also not prudent to ask a lot of things from the society, because in UPSC also there's so much of unpredictability. The prelims paper can go haywire. You have 2 papers, you have to qualify the second paper as well. In the first paper there is so much competition. Secondly, there is the mains examination. You have essay paper, some people scoring 130, 140 in 1 year essay. The next year they give the examination, they score 60, 70. So that's also very unpredictable. And third is obviously interview. Nothing is in your hands. You can try to do better in these things, but it can go anywhere, right? So technically you should not be expecting too much. Try to give the best that you can, and ultimately results is not in your hand, as Bhagwan Krishna say in Gita also. Okay? Your job is to just work in the right direction. The result will be taken care of itself. Motivation में देखो, hope के बारे में, optimism के बारे में, the topper has actually underlined a few things. Sunita Krishnan opened Pratham to support certain victims after being harassed herself. सोशल स्किल्स, एबिलिटी टू एक्सप्रेस वंस कंसर्न्स एंड फीलिंग्स ऑफ अदर्स, एग्जांपल टेलीमानस, ये मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ हेल्थ एंड फैमिली वेलफेयर का इनिशिएटिव है। सो गवर्नमेंट इनिशिएटिव लिखा हुआ है, आपके पास बुद्धा का कोट है, राइट? सो आई जस्ट ट्राई टू हाईलाइट इट फॉर यू। अगेन इफ आई जस्ट वांट टू हाईलाइट अ फ्यू थिंग्स दैट यू नीड टू नो, बहुत सिंपल सा इंट्रोडक्शन है, एक सब हेडिंग है, सब हेडिंग के बाद साइड सब हेडिंग है जो इन्होंने ब्लॉक करके रखा है, बिकॉज दिस विल हेल्प द एग्जामिनर टू नो हाउ थिंग्स आर मेंशन्ड, ओके, हाउ थिंग्स आर एक्चुअली मेंशन्ड in various subheadings. This is the major heading, this is the side subheading, and accordingly she has mentioned about Buddha, she is also mentioning about the movie. देखो एक एग्जांपल नहीं है, सिर्फ सिविल सर्वेंट का एग्जांपल नहीं है, सिविल कोर्ट नहीं है, मल्टीपल एग्जांपल्स आर देयर. दिस इज वन फ्रॉम द सिविल सोसाइटी, ओके, दिस इज फ्रॉम गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया. So multiple aspects are mentioned and then eventually she is trying to conclude as well. ठीक है? Suicide is never an option. Just a moment. Suicide is never an option. Past is gone. Future is uncertain. Present is what we have and should make the best as it is a gift. अब देखो इसमें क्या है? The point I want to highlight over here is, अगर आप सोचोगे आप बहुत अच्छा इंट्रोडक्शन लिखोगे, बहुत रोजी चीजें लिखोगे, ठीक है, so it might not happen. This is not a technical quote. This is a very simplistic quote. But अपने भाषा में भी अगर आप लिख रहे हो, it does the purpose. It tries to give the message that you know a certain concept and you are trying to justify it. कई बार हम बहुत रोजी चीजें लिखने के चक्कर में हम लिखते भी नहीं है, ठीक है? So that should not happen. Why? How do you improve? How do you go about getting from 3 to 5 or let's say 5.5 or let's say 6 in an answer? Is just by doing one thing, which is writing. Because if you do not practice, you can never improve your marks. राइटिंग इज द फर्स्ट थिंग. कॉन्सेप्ट तो चलो ठीक है, हमने देख लिया क्या करना है, हमने थ्योरी देख लिया इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस का क्या है, वी हैव ऑलरेडी सीन हाउ डू यू राइट एन आंसर, वी हैव आल्सो सीन अ टॉपर कॉपी, ठीक है. दिस इज द सेकंड आंसर, विल जस्ट डिस्कस इट. बट इफ यू डू नॉट राइट, you will not improve. This is the point that I wanted to highlight. The next is, in public service, emotional intelligence is not about suppressing emotions but mastering its purpose to connect, to de-escalate and to uplift others with empathy and strength. Do you agree with the view? Discuss. Answer it again in 150 words and it's a 10 marker answer, right? So emotional intelligence as per Daniel Goleman, देखो, she has also written about Daniel Goleman, is the ability to understand one's emotions and understand others, utilize emotions in a productive way. Very very important. सिर्फ अंडरस्टैंड ही नहीं करना, उस इमोशन को अच्छे से चैनलाइज करना है, राइट? सो सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस इन पब्लिक सर्विस, फर्स्ट इज कनेक्ट. अब देखो जो क्वेश्चन में पूछा गया है ना, टू कनेक्ट, एग्जैक्टली सेम चीज हैज बीन मेड एज अ सब पॉइंट, ठीक है. सेकंड इज डी एस्केलेट. डी एस्केलेट ये रहा, इसको भी सब हेडिंग बना दिया है. कैलिब्रेटेड एक्ट, ये तो चलो एग्जांपल है. अपलिफ्ट अदर्स, डेवलप वेलफेयर पॉलिसीज फॉर वल्नरेबल सेक्शन. सो इस तरीके से जो क्वेश्चन में डिमांड पूछा हुआ है ना, उसी को इन्होंने सब हेडिंग्स बना दिया है, ठीक है. कनेक्ट हो गया, डी एस्केलेट हो गया, अपलिफ्ट अदर्स हो गया, ठीक है. यहां पे लिखा हुआ है ना, अपलिफ्ट अदर्स विद एम्पैथी एंड स्ट्रेंथ. अब एम्पैथी का एक एग्जांपल होगा संदीप नंदुरी एंड वल्नरेबल सेक्शन का एक एग्जांपल होगा, ठीक है. यू हैव सोमेश्वर इंस्टॉल्ड ऑफिस एसीज इन मैलन्यूट्रिशन सेंटर्स, ठीक है. तो इस तरीका से आपके पास एक रेडीमेड एग्जांपल्स भी हैं. इफ यू डू नॉट हैव एम्पल ऑफ एग्जांपल्स इन योर हैंड, simply pick these examples and put it in your notes. That will be good. Like there are a lot of toppers, those who have actually copied from the previous topper. So if you are going to write the next examination, your job is to analyze the people, those who have done, and pick those examples and put it in your notes. ठीक है? That is the single biggest thing that I want you to understand from a topper copy. For example, ये देखो, यहाँ पे कुछ सिविल सर्वेंट के भी नाम हैं. If I just show you. Example, Farhan Mumtaz created elderly club against elderly isolation, ठीक है. This was in Eastern India. If I'm not wrong, it was in Chhattisgarh और झारखंड, ठीक है. Compassionate cozy code by Prashant Nair, ठीक है, for donation to the people. Management of communal riots, de-escalate कैसे कर सकते हो? Operation Pigeon in Kerala. India Pakistan de-escalated after Operation Sindoor, ठीक है. India's calibrated response to terrorism. How multiple aspects have been brought. There is no one single example, there are multiple examples from multiple dimensions, ठीक है. multiple examples. एक सिर्फ civil servant का नहीं है. It's not just about IAS, IPS officers, but about civil society also. What other people are doing, right? What is government of India is doing? What the state governments are doing? What is NGOs doing? Is there an NGO who is working in that direction? So you have to look up these examples directly from here. If you want to create more examples, there's one website called Better India. Try to go and check this website. There's a lot of examples with respect to administration and good governance that you can directly pick up from this website, right? So this is all about emotional intelligence. The next class we are going to see about another very important topic, which is a very lengthy one also. It might take 2 classes. Topics for the next class: public service, values and ethics in public administration. What is the status? What are the various problems that they face? That is the number 1 topic. Number 2 is ethical concerns and dilemmas in government and private institutions. What is a government institution? What is a private institution? What is a private institution looking for? What is a government institution looking for? What is the basic agenda of both the organization? Private is basically driven by profit motive, right? Government, on the other hand, is driven by welfare initiative, right? So this kind of thing is there. Third is about laws, rules, regulation and conscience as source of ethical governance. Ethical guidance, ethical governance. Fourth is accountability and ethical governance. Fifth is strengthening of ethical and moral values in governance. Sixth, ethical issues in international relations. Very, very important. We are already seeing a lot of nonsense created by President Trump and your US, right? For example, the war against Iran, the issue in Venezuela, the issue with other Scandinavian countries, or let's say Europe. What is the thing being done by Trump? So how is ethical issues guided in international relations? The issue with NATO, okay? The issue with UNFCCC, the issue with WTO, World Trade Organization. So these are the issues that we are going to deal when we are talking about ethical relations and funding. For the seventh is corporate governance, right? What are the various issues that India is facing with respect to corporate governance? For example, there is an issue going on because of SDFC, right? We have other scams. For example, Satyam scam was there. So what are the things that it governs? What are the things that it takes? So with a lot of examples, we are going to see these topics for the next class. And after that, there is one more topic and we will be done with this syllabus of ethics in general, right? So I hope this session was helpful. If you have any doubt, please feel free to reach out to us. Till the next time, take care of yourself. Jai Hind.